There's not a separate school for first grade, a separate school for second grade, a separate school for third grade. Kids go to school, they get on a bus.
Elementary, middle, and high school.
But guess what? Elementary, but first grade, you're 6 or 7. And if you're in 5th grade, you're what? 12. Yeah. Big difference between a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old, but they ride the bus together.
I feel you.
So the kid that's got his AirPods on that's listening to Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion WAP because he's on the school bus, and your 7-year-old might be sitting across from them or whatever. Like, you can't, you put your kid in sports. Same situation. Like, there's going to be conversations. So the more, opposed you are to having that, or the more closed off you are, I think it makes it more difficult for them to communicate. And we all know kids want to know what they're not supposed to know about. You ban a book, the likelihood of them wanting to go out and read it is even higher. Kids want to know what they're not supposed to know about. You ban a book, the likelihood of them wanting to go out and read it is even higher. You tell them you can't listen to that dirty, nasty song. What do you think they're going to do? What did you do, Lenny?
I feel you.
Don't smoke cigarettes.
I feel you.
Don't drink.
I feel you, but that's not the point here. The point here is that the school system itself is not doing its job.
In what way, though? Like, when you're talking about certain books, they're still academic. When you're talking about some of the books that have been banned, they're touching on LGBTQ issues. But that is a very real part of life in 2023 for some of these students that are,
some of these students. We've already gone over the percentages, Kimmy. It's like, we either live in a democracy where majority rules,
but guess
or
what?
We don't.
What I'm saying to you, you said, should a kid be talking about sexuality before 10? I mean, you teach your kids boundaries before that, right? You teach your kids that if they're touched in places, by a stranger, that they're supposed to come directly to mommy, daddy, a teacher, whatever. So you're already having those conversations because those are private parts and you shouldn't be touched there. So I think that there are nuances to every conversation. You know what I mean? And when your children are with their teachers more than they're with their parents, like, that's not a teacher's fault. That's the system we created. 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. aftercare and whatever. Parents got to work around the clock. Then sometimes they go to daycare. You leave them with
You know what my problem is? Well, first of all, the curriculum sucks in public schools because they're, all based around money. How much money the school gets is based on how well the students do, which is based around the test. That's not my problem. That's part of the problem of public schools. My problem is with teachers individually using their belief system to influence kids.
But for many teachers, they're like, we indoctrinate our belief system. Like, are you kidding me? All we have time to do is teach this bullshit state mandated. I wish I had a minute to put my own spin on something, to actually educate a student or to teach them something outside of this. But to your point, because this is what, it's based on, I think it's got a lot more, Len, to do with the conversations that these kids are having amongst each other. I think it's got a lot more to do with the access they have to the internet and to information that maybe we didn't have access to, 20, 30 years ago. And the fact that they're going unchecked because parents are checked out. I came across a post from a therapist, Lenny, and it was heartbreaking. I put it up on my Instagram page, and it was things that this person has heard from their young, from their child patients. My parents are always busier on their phone. Why am I here? Makes me want to leave. That's a 9-year-old. My dog gets more attention. Dad said it's because the dog can't talk, so I stopped talking. That's a 7-year-old. I wish I was as important as their phone. A 6-year-old. My mom is too busy, she says, but she texts her friends all day. Why not tell me the truth? She's just avoiding me. A 9-year-old. And this goes on and on and on. When a kid comes into school and they're talking to their friends and this is where they're getting their attention or they're seeking this in other places, you can't blame it all on the teachers that all of a sudden these are the conversations that are coming back to your household. Like, how many times have you sat down and engaged a teacher to find out how they even feel about these things?
Do you remember when you were 5 years old and you met your uncle, you met an uncle or something that you didn't know, and he looked giant, he looked bigger than life.
Yeah.
And then you turned 18 and you see him again and you're like, oh, he's a normal guy. This is what children look at the world with. So you could tell your kid one time during the day, hey, I'm busy right now, come back later. And that is their whole entire perception.
You're justifying these comments?
Yeah, I am, because I have kids, and I understand that kids look at the world
but guess what?
As this grandiose, but that's all they know.
All right, but Len, to bring it back to banning books and things like that and who's got the control over what your children are learning, it's 2023. The difference between now and then, when you were a kid, when I was a kid, what did we have to do? We played rock, paper, scissors. You went outside and played. That's not what they're doing anymore. When you send those kids to the kids' table or you leave them to their own devices, they pull out their own device and they're searching the internet and God only knows what's popping up. So these kids have access to adult information in a way that we never had when we were kids. And guess what? Yeah, my older cousins were talking about kissing boys and dirty and the rest of it because that's what happens at family gatherings. It was weird. Like you had a bunch of cousins that were all around the same age and they were all like 4 years older than me, right? Then there was me by myself. I was like, my mom was the only person in our whole family pregnant, I guess, at that time. And then everybody was younger than me. So it was either hang out and play like nanny to the 6-year-olds or try to be older and hang out with the older cousins, right? Now, the fearful thing is, when you're talking about banned books, when we're talking about all of these subjects, like it's weird to me because, when you're disconnected as parents and then you want to just flex and place the blame on the teachers, on the education system for what your kids are talking about or, their own self-perception or self-awareness, it's like, well, maybe if you were a little bit more engaged and willing to have the conversations as opposed to just trying to ban the books and shut everything down because they're not ready, then you'd have more control over the narrative.
Yeah, but there's a problem is
parents.
For that one parent that came out and said, I don't like this book, they're going to be 500 and all 500 of them are going to have a different opinion on what they don't like. And that can't influence the school system. The school system needs to be structured so that there's a baseline education by whoever comes up with the system. Our most educated scholars in the country come up with a basic curriculum that teaches the children. That should be it.
Who did it? And that's the world evolves, Len. And so as the world evolves, what that curriculum entails is going to expand. We can't have the same exact education system we had in 1955.